election is incredibly important. This isn't about whether somebody's a good businessman and knows how to build buildings, or somebody was a good governor and knows how to expand Medicaid, or anything of the sort. This is about the fundamentals. The fundamentals about liberty and the civil society and governance and what it is to be an American, what it is to be an exceptional people. That's what this election's about. It's truly a disgrace that Donald Trump won't stand toe-to-toe and debate Ted Cruz. And it's our loss. And we should continue to demand that he do it. I'd be happy to have them debate here with any moderator they want or no moderator. And we'll bring these folks in here. We'll use this studio. It's very comfortable, and they can have their debate.
One of three things is going to happen. Trump is the nominee flat out. He gets the 1237. Cruz is the nominee flat out. He gets the 1237. Or this goes into a convention. I'm not Nostradamus. I'm not into the prediction business. But as I look at this now, and I assess it, just based on now, things can change. I think this thing is winding up at a convention. I think that's where the decision's going to be made. Now, many of you will say, well, then, it has to go to Trump if he has a plurality of the votes. If he has more delegates than anybody else, he should get it. Now, 160 years of Republican history tells us that's not the way it works. You need a majority of the delegates. You need 1,237 to be the nominee on the first ballot. Nobody has a right to the other delegates, the delegates who aren't committed to Trump, who would have to move over to Trump if he doesn't get a majority. I'm just warning you ahead of time because I can see chaos breaking out now, people being confused about the process and so forth. And I can see the establishment using this process to try and ram their candidate, whomever it is, Kasich, Jeb Bush, Paul Ryan, Romney, whomever it is, down our throats, which would be an electoral disaster for us. We are a republic built around a federalist model. Well, if you're a populist, none of that matters. You're a small d Democrat. And if you're a populist, you believe in plebiscites and referenda. Well, unalienable rights should not be subjected to that kind of activity. Majority rule is not majority rule when we have God-given rights. When we have natural law, majority rule is irrelevant, or rule by one is irrelevant. We have those rights as individual human beings. Trying to replace Antonin Scalia on the Supreme Court right in the teeth of a presidential election. The Republican Senate must stand firm and remain firm and say no. Barack Obama has nothing but contempt for the United States Constitution, and they should make sure that whomever he wants, no matter who it is, no matter their background, that they do not have the opportunity to have a pro-American and patriots here. Something is going on in this country that should cause you great concern. Now, many of you don't like big companies. To me, it shouldn't be whether a company is big or small that matters. It should be whether they follow the law. But in order for a company to follow the law must be just. In other words, the politicization of the criminal procedure, the politicization of our civil procedures by the federal government, by the Department of Justice, is tyranny. That's the sort of thing they used to do in the Soviet Union and they do in fascist Russia right now. It's the sort of thing they do in communist China. A society has to have a stable and just law for its citizens and for its organizations. That's what a business is. A corporation is a business that is established under the laws of the land, federal and state laws, where people organize to produce things or to provide services. That's all it is. And people can invest in it. And we want these companies to be successful. I'm not talking about crony capitalists. I'm not talking about using government to subsidize themselves and to attack their competitors. Honest to goodness businesses. When politicians politicize our laws, you should be very, very concerned about this because it not only applies to the other guy, it can apply to you as well. And that's what's happening right now. It's happening with so-called climate change, previously global warming, previously global cooling. What's happening is, starting with the Attorney General of New York, these so-called prosecutors who are elected, they're politicians, are now claiming that if ExxonMobil or these other major companies don't recognize climate change as a fact, don't indicate to their investors and the public that climate change has an impact on their financial status, if they don't represent that they are contributors to climate change, then they are said to have been misleading their investors and misleading the public in criminal and civil ways. Now, this is crazy. The Attorney General of New York has subpoenaed records from ExxonMobil going back a decade and a half. He wants their press releases. He wants their internal letters. He wants their internal discussions about global warming, global cooling, climate change, because he intends to make a case against them that they misled their investors and they misled the public. So we are institutionalizing, we are ingraining the leftist kook agenda within our constitutional system, within our statutory system. And if people don't buckle to this groupthink, to this crazy think, they're literally going to be punished, and some of them may go to prison. Now, this is crystallized, this is underscored in a hearing that took place yesterday in the United States Senate with a senator from Rhode Island, a senator you've never heard of before. I think his name is Whitehouse. And the Attorney General of the United States. It's only a minute or so, but I really want you to listen to this, because this will show you that to use our laws to criminalize politics, to use our laws to compel a belief system, is as tyrannical as is possibly imaginable. Go ahead.
Under President Clinton, the Department of Justice brought and won a civil RICO action
Let's just
against
stop right there. Doesn't he look like one of those old Soviet apparatchiks right there, with his head down, his wave of white hair, looking through his spectacles over the top of them? Oh, in the Clinton administration, we brought charges against you-know-who. It's like, whoa, 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 where are we going with this? Go ahead.
Tobacco industry for its fraud. Under President Obama, the Department of Justice has done nothing so far about the climate denial scheme.
Stop. The climate denial scheme. So, that is a loaded phrase that has political, policy, and legal consequences. A scheme. In other words, people scheming to rip off investors, people scheming to keep facts from the public, people scheming to do something evil. That's what he's talking about. The abuse of language by the left, the attempt to turn people into criminals who haven't done anything wrong. That's what he's about. And notice he talked about the tobacco cases under Clinton. That was a whole new era of litigation that was considered really way out there. And so the tobacco companies, after a while, they decided to settle. And they coughed up tens of billions of dollars, which the states were going to use, recall, to help offset health care costs related to tobacco. Where did all that money go? Nobody knows. We don't even talk about it anymore, but it's all gone. One of the greatest scams there ever was. They're trying to build on that. And this has nothing to do with any of that. This isn't a matter of knowing or not knowing whether tobacco is dangerous to your health and concealing it or not concealing it. We're talking about phony, pretend science being pushed by the left to advance an anti-capitalist, anti-industrial revolution agenda. These are degrowthers. I write about it in Plunder and Deceit. This is an ideology. This is anti-capitalism. And here you have a United States Senator from Rhode Island. He's talking to the Attorney General of the United States, demanding that the climate denier schemes that are apparently being used by these companies be attacked, not just criminally, but civilly. Go.
A request for action by the Department of Justice has been referred by you to the FBI. My question to you is, other than civil forfeitures and matters attendant to a criminal case, are there other circumstances in which a civil matter under the authority of the Department of Justice has been referred to the FBI?
All right, let me stop. Let me tell you what he's up to. As an old chief of staff to an Attorney General of the United States, he's trying to pressure her to bring more cases, send more cases to the FBI for investigation on this issue of climate change, global warming, global cooling. Do you know what it's like when a company gets a knock on the door from FBI agents wanting to go into their records, wanting to investigate what they've done based on something like climate change? The entire culture of the company is frozen. People are scared to death. People fear, I mean, when the FBI is coming, you're wondering, what did I do wrong? People start pointing at each other over what? They haven't committed any crimes. They haven't committed any civil offenses. This is a huge problem that's developing in this country right now. You and I didn't vote for this. You and I are barely even aware of this. This is going on under the radar. Go ahead.
Senator, thank you for raising that issue, and thank you for your work in this area. I know
well, his work in what area? His work as a type of legislative mobster, where he's trying to force the criminalization of these issues, trying to take down companies unless they adhere to this leftist agenda? Thank you, Senator, for your work in this area. She's the chief law enforcement officer of the country, and she endorses what he's saying. Go ahead.
Is deep. This matter has been discussed. We have received information about it and have referred it to the FBI to consider.
Notice they're kind of talking in ways that you and I, what matter has been referred? About whom? Apparently some company is being targeted right now. I believe it's ExxonMobil. I don't know it, but that company is being targeted by the Attorney General in New York, and they see big money, and they hate capitalism, and they hate oil. I believe this company or some other company is being targeted. That's what they're talking about. Let me ask you a question. How does the United States Senator even know this? Why is the United States Senator a political hack from Rhode Island, a left-wing kook from Rhode Island? Why is he involved in any aspect of the criminal justice process? And yet, yes, I believe it's been referred to the FBI. What's been referred to the FBI? That one of these companies didn't embrace the nonsense about climate change and didn't reflect it in its public records and its filing with the SEC and so forth? Ladies and gentlemen, this is what's going on. Soviet-style investigations and prosecutions under the left-wing banner. Go.
Whether or not it meets the criteria for what we could take action on. I'm not aware of a civil referral at this time. I will look into that and get back to you, but I'm not aware of a civil referral outside of the one that you just raised.
Are there any civil cases with the United States?
Stop right there. You notice this guy's head is planted on the desk, on the paper. He barely looks up. Do you want to know why? Because his staff wrote these questions for him. Because he's such a dummy. He can't even think for himself. It's even worse than that. His staff wrote these questions for him, I assure you, in consultation with people over the Department of Justice. We call this an inside-outside game. He's asking questions. He has talking points. She knows he's going to ask these questions. They're making sort of a public spectacle of this to let all these companies know, even though this is going on behind the scenes, to let them all know, you don't buckle under. You don't accept so-called climate change. You don't follow the liberal agenda, you will be investigated, you will be prosecuted, you will be charged, you will lose your job, you'll lose your investors. The heavy iron fist of an out-of-control government. That's what this is. That's who that is. A young man, 28 years old, he was going to be 29 years old, Officer Colson, an African-American, a police officer in Prince George's County, was slaughtered for no reason whatsoever yesterday. The police deserve our support. The police are trying to protect us. Are they all perfect? No. Are we all perfect? No. But there are violent people out there, and we need the police to help us. And so when they become the targets, they're attacking the entirety of society. They're attacking our civilization. They're attacking our communities. And so they deserve our support. And yet, it just seems that there's more incidents now of attacks on cops and murdering police officers that are going on. And yesterday is a prime example of that.
Ronald Reagan didn't want to make a deal with the old Soviet Union, a deal in which hundreds of millions of people would have been locked up behind the Iron Curtain forever. He didn't want to make a deal. He left Iceland. Remember the deal? If he would give up, quote-unquote, Star Wars, our missile defense system, Gorbachev was prepared to basically throw all the nuclear missiles on the table. Reagan said no. Why? Because he wanted to break the back of their military. That's why. That's what great men, great leaders do. They don't make deals with dictators. They don't make deals with terrorist nations. They don't make deals with communist leaders unless they are certain, or unless they feel they're certain, that it will lead to an end result, that is the destruction of these governments. This election is incredibly important. This isn't about whether somebody's a good businessman and knows how to build buildings, or somebody was a good governor and knows how to expand Medicaid, or anything of the sort. This is about the fundamentals. The fundamentals about liberty and the civil society and governance and what it is to be an American, what it is to be an exceptional people. That's what this election's about.
You will hear me now and you will hear me later.